I need more coffee.
Yeah. Is your coffee running low?
Oh, it's running low.
I can get you new coffee.
You want new coffee? Can you get me another coffee?
Let's cheers our coffees. Tuesday morning coffee.
Tuesday morning coffee. That's good coffee.
Devin made this coffee for us.
Sick.
Yeah,
Thanks,
he does
Devin.
a great job.
Thanks, Devin.
Did a great job. Today we're talking about something that is very serious. Cards.
Cards.
This game... This game as a whole is a dice game and a card game. And you can play as hard as you want, but if those two things don't work in your favor, you're kind of screwed.
Well, probably.
One of the things that I've dealt with in multiple turns of 40K, you and I play a lot against each other too, and others.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've had happen is in turn 1 and turn 2, I draw cards that are unattainable. They are undoable. Ooh. You cannot. Even if all the dice rolls are 6s, there's still no way that you can accomplish those things. So today we're going over kind of your mindset and what you should do when you get cards that are completely unachievable.
Because it's going to happen usually at least once per game. You'll have one flop of cards.
Yep.
Where you're like, oh, either it's too difficult to do, right? It is truly unobtainable.
There's also like a third column too, where it's like it's far too risky to actually do.
Yeah, I think that's one. Sometimes you'll look at it and go, I can attain this, but the losses will be so savage that it'll cripple the rest of my game.
Exactly.
So when you are sitting there and you draw 2 cards marked for death, and I don't know, behind enemy lines, and you know that neither of those are attainable, what happens? What do you do? What's your game plan from there on out? Do you like early shuffle cards?
No. I mean, just to tackle your question, like, what do you do when you get it, especially even early in the game? You let it ride. The cards are worth a command point, so you can ditch them for a CP if you don't have some kind of like CP generation already, like, you know, a character or
which is
unit.
Something I think is really important for just general victories in the game, is having CP generation somewhere allows you to get, like, if you're gearing yourself towards, hey, there's the chance that I draw a bad card, I have this CP generation tool to try to shuffle that into something that's going to increase my chance of victory.
Yeah. Right. So that takes the sting out of having to like shuffle early. But so let's say it's first turn.
Okay.
You flop a couple of cards and one of them is like behind enemy lines and like and then something else that's just unobtainable for you at that time based on the kinds of units that you have and where you deployed them.
What do? The answer is never cycle the CP. Right? It's never cycle for a CP. And the reason why you don't in the first couple of turns is because you might truly need that CP going into turn 4 or 5, where you can more reliably do the math on what is left in the deck. Because you're allowed to card count.
Yeah,
right?
that is such a great point.
Yeah, you're allowed to card count. So later in the game, in turn 5, if you're looking at what secondaries have not been drawn yet, and you can go, okay, what are my chances of pulling something I can actually do on the last turn of the game versus at the very beginning of the game where you've got a whole deck of cards and a bunch of them might not be accomplishable.
Yes.
Right? So do it when the math makes sense.
Yeah, and I think also do it depending on if you're winning the game or losing the game, how desperate you want to get. This is like when you gamble on trying to get a victory.
Exactly.
If you haven't seen Assassinate yet, and it's late game, and that you know that character's already browbeaten, you're going to take him down. Yeah, that's your time to start burning cards. Try to fish for that stuff. If you have great board control, you haven't seen Engage at all, start shuffling full on.
And I think like getting bad cards, people always, from my observations, anyways, will often apply their like the reasons for their losses to, oh well, I drew horrible cards. Maybe. But, and maybe you did, but I would argue that might not be actually the reason why you're losing.
And the reasoning why the reason I'm saying that is because the most consistent way to score points in Warhammer 40K is by winning primary.
Yes.
And so the thing is if you are winning and crushing primary, like if you're getting 10 to 15 points every single round in that band, like you're going to get 50 plus points over the course of the game just by getting that every turn, round after round, regardless of your primaries.
And I feel that kind of slots into, okay, I drew 2 cards. None of these I can get any points off of. I should think about primary. Just tuck them in the corner. Those cards are done. Forget about it. Move
over.
on. You should think about primary, positioning, board control, how much you can kill, and keeping your units safe.
Yeah.
Those things should come to mind as soon as it's, my cards are getting me no victory points this turn.
Yeah.
Chances are, if you play a couple games, you're going to get a few turns where it's unattainable.
Yeah. Or minorly attainable, and you get 2 points or something.
Or it is attainable, but it loses you the rest of the game. We're talking about those situations where in no way is it a good plan to try to achieve these things.
No. And especially since primary is usually what matters more in the long run. Like, even if you score really well on primary, like let's say, let's craft the scenario, right? So beginning of the game, your opponent draws 2 cards. He can score 5 on one and 3 on another, right? You draw 2 cards. You can score 2 on one and nothing on another. Oh no, right? It's not a good start, right? However, keep the cards, trundle through, set yourself up for keeping pace on primary or doing well on primary, making sure you're always getting those primary points, because the secondaries will present themselves in time, right? If you are set up on primary to be scoring consistently over and over again, you don't need to worry so much about the secondaries, and you don't need to bet the farm on one secondary.
And there's so many factors in the game that are random. Dice rolls, cards, advanced rolls,
so much
all
of it.
this stuff. It's all random. But there's one thing that is really consistent, and that is you have to score primary.
Yeah.
So I 100% agree. I think if your cards are no good, you should either push for primary or set yourself up for
all those
future gains
turns,
on
right?
primary.
Exactly. And like, I'll tell you a story about, a friend of mine. He's a really good Space Marine player, and he would always tell me to do the math on things. All right. It wasn't you, funny enough. Put the shirt away. So he would always tell me to do the math. And he says, like, before you go moving models around, look at the secondaries. Look at what's left in the deck. Look what's left in your opponent's deck. And take, like, a quick assessment. If you need to move something to prepare for the next turn, do that.
Yeah.
It's okay. And you don't need to like bet. So like, and it actually worked out. I remember there was a game I was playing. It was against an Imperial Guard player. And I looked at my secondaries. My secondaries weren't phenomenal. I could get one, but not the other. I ditched it for a CP. But then I moved a squad of scouts into a building. Because I was like, if I draw area denial next turn, I win. I won the game.
Yep.
And my next turn flopped 2. One of them was area denial because I looked at the list, moved the scouts into the middle, and said, go for a win. And they wouldn't have been able to get there if I didn't do the setup.
If there was no prep.
Right? If there was no prep. And so just because you can't do them immediately, or just because you drew some and they don't quite work out for you right away, doesn't mean you can't set up for later turns. Doesn't mean you can't focus on primaries. Taking your opponent's points away too. Like if you go, okay, my secondaries are bum, right? Not going to get either of them. But you know what I can do? I can kill my opponent off of this objective and take 5 points from him.
Right. So that kind of falls into the category of my cards are garbage. I need to make a choice whether I'm going to position for this turn, position for the next turn, which some armies need to do to get really solid charges off, or go the killy route.
Yeah. And manage what your opponent can score.
Yes. And
Right?
and manage what your opponent can score. Because you can kind of see what cards they've already pulled, right? That is an open source.
Yeah.
You can just go, what cards did you get? What cards do you have left? You don't want to throw, like, if it's late game and you have a a low wound count unit and one of them is a character, you don't want to throw that forward because on the off chance they get assassinated and steal the game away from you, you're going to be really upset.
Yeah, exactly.
So definitely setting yourself up and realizing what your opponent has to try to clip away on their ability to score. Especially, if you can't score, force them to not score even if they could.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so the thing is like, whatever happens, don't draw cards, look at them and go, I can't do either. This sucks. Oh, it sucks. No, it doesn't suck. It's just the way that it went. Draw the 2. Think about what you can do now. Sometimes a bad secondary draw is a blessing in disguise because it means you go hyper aggressive.
Yeah, it's an opportunity. Right? You go, I am free now. I no longer have to care about the intricacies of the game. I can just go game plan the thing that I designed this list to do.
Time
move forward, kill, or run defensive.
Right. Bombard. Start taking objectives away, and like if you can do that, it's like you scored secondaries because you're taking primary points away from your opponent. You're stopping them from scoring. You're putting more pressure on them. Yes, you didn't rack up a bunch of secondary scores in that turn. Yes, that sucks, but it's not necessarily a game loss just because you're like, oh, I can't keep up. No. How you react to that challenge, how you find opportunity in the challenge, and how your list can pivot to a different kind of role speaks volumes to how good you are as a player, how well you can pivot in those scenarios, and how well tuned your list is to either playing, a more secondary heavy kind of cagey game or one of those like balls to the walls kinds of like hardcore aggressive game plans.
I like find opportunity in the challenge.
Yeah. Ultimately, you know what? Like we can't tell you how to play, but we can give you suggestions based on our experience, what works and when. And bottom line, don't panic if you draw bum cards. It happens to the best of us. Just make sure you can pivot well, change the game plan, and have a plan for when things go that way.
I think that is sort of our big takeaway point is have a plan.
Yeah.
Even if the plan is kind of very open, just know that if you are getting nothing for cards, put the cards away, recenter, look at the battlefield, primary objectives, board control. Can I kill something important that's going to try to kill me?
Yeah.
How do I set myself up for the next turn? 100%. Those are that's the game plan that you should go into. Okay, cards are trash. Let's focus on what we can do.
Exactly.
And a lot of this game is not knowing what you can do because so much of it is a dice roll and so much of it is a card pull. But there's things that you can really make consistent.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great point. Stick to those
consistencies. Yeah. Right. We play a random game, but your game plan can be consistent, and that's okay. Right. And oftentimes the consistent game plan wins out. For all of us here at Hyperspace Hobbies, happy Tuesday. Throw something down in the comment section. Appease the algorithm machine spirit.
Talk about my shirt still.
Oh, my sweet Lord.
Go back and keep talking about the shirt.
I'm pressing stop.